Hey hobby heads, this is Jasper from Metro Hobbies, and today I'm going to bring you through the weird and wonderful world of contrast paints with my friend Phil over here. Alrighty. So what are contrast paints? What are they for? What are they used for? There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of talk about them, but there isn't particularly that much concrete information about them online, especially for people outside of the Warhammer community. And so this video is basically like a little primer to try and explain to you what contrast paints are for, what you'd use them for, and really what their benefits are. Are they for more beginner players? Are they for more experienced painters? It really depends. So what I've got here is that I've got Phil. Phil is a Space Marine of the Emperor's Children, and he needs to be painted very quick. He's got a tournament coming up in like less than a week, and no one will want to do 50 layers of deep purple to try and get the nice purple out. So he's been assembled, and the first thing I did is that I Zenithal primed the model. So Zenithal priming is pretty weird. If you don't have an airbrush, you probably have never heard of it before. You may have heard of Zenithal highlights, but again, those are mainly for airbrushes. The good thing about contrast paints is that they're very thin and they're very translucent. The idea is that more of the pigment settles in the recesses while it draws away from the raised areas, meaning that it's really good for very small, finely detailed models. So the idea is that you prime them a white color or an off-white color, and then you apply the paint, and the undercoat, the prime, actually counts as the highlight. That's what you're seeing as the highlights through the paint. So with Zenithal priming, that is basically trying to replicate the sun. So it looks like I've primed him white, but if you look on the underneath of the model, I've actually primed him black first, hopefully to catch all those shadows and stuff like that. The main idea being that when the pigment actually settles, the dark parts stay dark, the bright parts stay bright. It's a really, really simple and effective trick to try and add a lot of depth to the model. So I personally started with Chaos Black, and then the new White Scar. The new White Scar is absolutely wonderful. I don't think you can get a more whiter white than the new Citadel White Scar, but that may just be me as a Citadel Prime head. Then I'll now tell you the deep and arcane secrets of how to use contrast paint. What you do is that you get the paint, you shake it up a bit, you open it, you get a brush, dip it directly into the pot, and then put it over the model. I know, it sounds like sacrilege. Half of the people right now are listening to this who have never heard of contrast paints are probably screaming, flipping tables. But yes, one thick coat is all you need. Again, this works like a wash, maybe like an ink. It's the midpoint between it. And so, as you can see with good old Phil here, he's got one nice, very, very deep shade of purple over it. Now, of course, with the new contrast range, they've gone really hard on the pigments. So you can see there are a couple of areas here where it looks substantially darker. That's just because I've accidentally went over it with another layer. But with the ability of getting this purple in one coat, 1.5 coats, I was able to do this, I was able to paint this armor in less than 5 minutes. It was just one quick run over with my brush, leading me to spend the next 45, 30 minutes on the rest of the details. So as you can see here, he's there in all of his finery. He's got his, wonderful golden trim on him. All of the studs are golden. I've used, I believe it's called Abaddon Black, the other contrast paint for the Black Bolter. And you can see because it's from the older range, it's very, very heavy on settling away from the raised areas, and you can get some really, really nice definition. If you want more of a harsh black, the new Chaos Black, I believe it's called, that has just come out on the contrast range, also looks wonderful. So that's a basic primer into what it is, but now there's another misconception that it's just for speed painters who don't really care about hobby. Contrast is really just a hack to get you into tournaments quicker. Well, that's not really the case. Contrast can be used in a plethora of more interesting and more advanced techniques. So, unfortunately, I can't show that many of them on Phil here. Phil's basically all battle ready and ready to go, but he's got one of his best mates. This is Pete the Iron Warrior, also known as Pete the War Crimer. It depends on what you want to talk about. Phil doesn't like the amount of virus bombs Pete uses, but it's fine. It doesn't matter as long as he gets the job done. Now, this is, I've just primed it with Vallejo gunmetal, and all I've done is put a very, very thick coat of Rattling Grime over the model. Rattling Grime is a new contrast paint, even though it works really, really well as a glaze. Using glazes with contrast paint is actually really, really useful. As you can see here, just one coat of Rattling Grime, and it becomes this very gritty, very grimy, very dark gunmetal. So it's really good if you want to do things clogged up, but even if you want to do more interesting things, say you want to do Alpha Legion and you want to do a nice blue glaze over something, well, thin down. I usually thin down a lot of this blue here, Frost Heart, and then I apply it over the model, and you get a really nice blue. It's the same for Horus Heresy Thousand Suns, but even going beyond, if you want to do a weird, wacky new paint scheme for Space Marines or something even out of Warhammer, it's definitely up to you. Also, a big misconception is that contrast paints are primarily here to replace airbrushes. Airbrushes aren't going anywhere. Not only that, but contrast paints run perfectly through airbrushes, especially for glazes. This is all done using a paintbrush. However, I've seen incredibly thin, even glazes slowly layering up contrast paint. And another thing contrast paint can do really, really well, which I can't show with either Phil or Pete here, is with Bob. This is Bob the Imperial Fist. Now, neither of Phil or Pete really like Bob that much. He's a bit of a narc trying to subvert their ways of supplanting Horus as the true Emperor of mankind. But really, the main thing that they hate about Bob is how easy his yellow armor is to paint, because that is just one coat of the new Imperial Fists yellow over the paint, and it is just one incredibly nice, incredibly nice yellow. Gone are the days of having to apply 50 billion layers of the thin yellow paint. Gone are the days of needing to buy a $300 airbrush just to get all right paint, all right yellow that doesn't muck up the rest of the model. Now you just need one layer, and you're basically golden to do all of the other stuff. You can also see, as I've done on his sword, that's how glaze looks over a metallic. That's the metallic blue. I've thinned it down a whole lot, but it looks absolutely wonderful. Well, I hope that that's a really good primer, no pun intended, into the weird, wacky, and wonderful world of contrast paints. If you want to find out where to get these contrast paints, feel free to go onto metrohobbies.com.au, or if you're based in Melbourne, you can come to either our Box Hill or CBD store. I personally am in the CBD store most Fridays, a couple Saturdays maybe, so feel free to come through then if you want to have a chat about contrast paints. As you can tell, I'm pretty hyped about them, so yes. So that's it. Have a good one.